Hello Mark, I'm Adam. My number is S0341008 and my level is junior. Today I will read Suzanne Simard, How Trees Talk to Each Other. Post July 2016. Rated fascinating, informative. Imagine you are walking through a forest. I'm guessing you are thinking of a collection of trees, what we foresters call a stand, with their rugged stems and their beautiful crowns. Yes, trees are the foundation of forests, but the forest is much more than what you see. And today I want to change the way you think about forests. You see, underground there is this other world, a world of infinite biological pathways that connect trees and allow them to communicate and allow the forest to behave as though it's a single organism. It might remind you of a sort of intelligence. How do I know this? Here's my story. I grew up in the forest of British Columbia. I used to lay on the forest floor and stare up at the tree crowns. They were giants. My grandfather was a giant too. He was a horse logger, and he used to selectively cut cedar poles from the inland rainforest. Grandpa told me about the quiet and cohesive way of the woods, and how my family was knit into it. So I followed in Grandpa's footsteps. He and I had this curiosity about forests, and my first big aha moment was at the outhouse by our lake. Our poor dog jigged and slipped and fallen into a pit, so Grandpa ran up with his shovel to rescue the poor dog. He was down here, swimming in the mud, but as Grandpa dug through that forest floor, I became fascinated with the roots, and under that, what I learned later was the white mycelium, and under that the red and yellow mineral horizons. Eventually, Grandpa and I rescued a poor dog, but it was at the moment that I realized that palette of roots and soil was really the foundations of the forest, and I wanted to know more, so I studied forestry. But soon I found myself working alongside powerful people in charge of the commercial harvest. The extent of the clear cutting was alarming, and I soon found myself conflicted by my part in it. Not only that, the spreading and hacking of the aspens and birches to make way for the more commercially valuable plant pies and birds was astounding. It seemed that nothing could stop the relentless industrial machine. So I went back to school and I studied my old world. As you see, scientists had just discovered in the library in vitro that one pie seeding root could transmit carbon to another pie seeding root. But this was in a laboratory, and I wondered, could this happen in real forests? I thought yes. Trees in real forests might also share information below ground. But this was really controversial, and some people thought I was crazy, and I had really hard time getting research funding. But I persevered, and I eventually conducted some experiments deep in the forest. 25 years ago, I grew 80 replicates of three species: pepper birch, Douglas fir, and western red cedar. I figured the birch and the fir will be connected in a below-ground way, but not the cedar. It was in its own other world, and I gathered my apparatus and I had no money, so I had to do it on the cheap. So I went to Canada Tire, loader, and I bought some plastic bags, and duct tape and shed clothes, a timer, a paper suit, a respirator, and then I borrowed some high-tech stuff from my university, a Geiger counter, a scintillation counter, a mass spectrometer, microscopes, and then I got some very dangerous stuff. Syringes full of radioactive carbon, 14 carbon dioxide gas, and some high pressure bottles of the stable isotop carbon, 13 carbon dioxide gas, but I was legally permitted. Loaded. Oh, and I forgot some stuff, important stuff. The bug spray, the bear spray, the filters for my respirator. Oh well. The first day of the experience, we got out to our prod and greased the beer and her cup chased us off. And I had no beer spray, but you know, this is how forest research in Canada goes. So I came back the next day, and Mama Grazing and her cup were gone. So this time we really got started, and I put on my white paper suit. I put on my respirator, and then I put the plastic bags over my trees. I got my giant syringes and inject the bags with my tracer isotope carbon dioxide gases. First a birch. I injected carbon-14 radioactive gas into a bag of birch, and then for fur, I injected a stable isotope carbon-13 carbon dioxide gas. I used two isotopes because I was wondering whether there was two-way communication going on between the species. I got to the final bag, the 80th replicate, and all of a sudden Mama Grizzly showed up again, and he started to chase me, and I had my syringe above my head and was sweating the mosquitoes. And I jumped into the truck, and I thought, this is why people do lab study. I waited an hour. I figured it will take this long for the trees to suck up the CO2 through photosynthesis, turn it into sugars, send it down into their roots, and maybe a hypoxide shuttle that carbon blown to their neighbors. After the hour was up, I rolled down my windows and I checked for Mama Grizzly. Oh good, she's over there eating her huckberries. So I got out of the truck and I got to work. I went to my first bag with the birch. I pulled the bag off. I ran my Geiger counter over its leaves. Oh, go. Perfect. The birch had taken up the radioactive gas. Then the moment of truth, I went over to the fir tree. I pulled off its back. I ran the Geiger counter up its needles, and I heard the most beautiful sound. Cow! It was the sound of birch talking to fir, and birch was saying, "Hey, can I help you?" And fir was saying, "Yeah, can you send me some of your carbon? Because somebody threw a shed clothes over me." I went up to Cedar and I ran the Geiger counter over its leaves, and as I suspect silence, Cedar was in its own world. It was not connected into a web linking birch and fir. I was so excited. I ran from plot to plot and I checked all 18 replicates. The evidence was clear.
The C-13 and C-14 was showing me that Pepper, Birch, and Douglas were in a lively two-way conversation. It turned out at the time of the year, in this summer, the birch was sending more carbon to fur than fur was sending back to birch, especially when the fur was shady. And then in later experience, we found the upside, that fur was sending more carbon to birch than birch was sending to fur. This was because the fur was still growing while the birch was leafless, so it turns out the two species were interdependent, like yin and yang. And that at the moment everything came into focus for me. I knew I had found something big, something that will change the way we look at how trees interact in trees, from not just competitors but to cooperators. And has found solid evidence of the massive battleground communications network, the other words. Now I truly hope and believe that my discovery will change how we practice forestry, from clear cutting and herbiciding to more holistic and sustainable methods that were less expensive and more practical. What was I thinking? I come back to that. So how do we do science in complex systems like forests? Well, as forest scientists, we have to do our research in the forest, and that's really tough. As I have shown you, we have to be really good at running from bears, but mostly we have to persevere in spite of all the stuff stacks against us, and we have to follow our intuition and our experiences and ask really good questions. And then we have got to gather our data and then verify. For me, I have conducted and published hundreds of experiments in the forest. Some of my oldest experimental plantations are now over 30 years old. You can check them out. That's how forest science works. So now I want to talk about science. How were Pepper, Birch, and Douglas fir communicating? Well, it turns out they were conversing not only in the language of carbon but also nitrogen and phosphorus and water and defense signals and elite chemicals and hormones. Information I have to tell you before me scientists had thought that below ground mutualistic symbiosis called mycorrhiza was involved. Mycorrhiza literally means fungus root. You see the reproductive organs when you walk through the forest. They are the mushrooms. The mushrooms then are just the tip of the iceberg, because coming out of these stems are fungal threads that form a mycelium, and that mycelium infects the colonize the roots of all the trees and plants, and where the fungal cells interact with the root cells, there's a trade of carbon for nutrients, and that fungus get those nutrients by growing through the soil and coating every soil particle. The web is so dense that there can be hundreds of kilometers of mycelium under a single footstep. And not only that, the mycelium connects different individuals in the forest. Individuals not only of the same species but between species. Like birch and fir, and it works kind of like the internet. You see? Like all networks, mycorrhizal networks have nodes and links. We made this net by
learning the short sequences of DNA of every tree and every fungal individuals in a patch of Douglas fir forest. In this picture, the circles represents the Douglas fir of the nodes, and the line represents the interlinking fungal highways of the leaves. The biggest, darkest nodes are the fusest node. We call those half trees or more fondly mother trees because it turns out that those half trees nurture their young, and one growing in the understory. And you can see those yellow dots. They are a young seedling that have established within the network of the old mother trees. In a single forest, a mother tree can be connected to hundreds of other trees. And using our isotope tracers, we have found that mother trees will send their excess carbon through the mycorrhizal network to the universal understory seedings, and we have associated this with increased seedling survival by 4 times. Now, we know we all favor our own children, and I wonder, could Douglas fir recognize its own kin, like Mama Grizzly and her cub? So we set about an experiment, and we grew mother trees with transgender seedlings. It turns out they don't recognize their kin. Mother trees colonize their kin with bigger mycorrhizal networks. They send them more carbon below ground. They even reduce their own root competition to make elbow rooms for their kids. When mother trees are injured or dying, they also send messages of wisdom on to the next generation of seedlings. So we have just isotope tracing to trace carbon moving from an injured mother tree down her trunk into the mycorrhizal network and into her nebula instead. Not only carbon but also defense signals. And these two compounds have increased the resistance of those seeding to future stresses, so trees talk. Applause. Thank you. Through back and forth conversations, they increase the resilience of the whole community. It probably reminds you of our own social communities and our families, well, at least some families. So let's come back to initial point. Forests are simply a collection of trees. They are complex systems with hubs and networks that overlap and connect trees and lowland to communicate. And they prove a means for feedbacks and adaptation. And this makes the forest resilient. It's because there are many hub trees and many overlaps networks, but they are also vulnerable not only to natural disturbances like bark beetles that prefer attack big oak trees by high-grade logging and clear-out logging. You see, you can take out one or two half trees, but there comes a tipping point because half trees are not unlike rivers in an upland. You can take out one or two and plenty still files, but you take out one too many, or maybe that one's holding on its wings, and the whole system collapses. So now how are you thinking about forests differently? Audience, yes! Cool, I'm glad. So, remember I said earlier that I hope that my research, my discoveries will change the way we practice forestry.
Well, I want to take a check into that 30 years later here in Western Canada. This is about 100 kilometers to the west of us, just on the border of Nation Park. That's a lot of clear cut. It's not so pristine. In 2014, the World Resources Institute reported that Canada in the past decade had the highest forest disappearance rate of any country worldwide. I bet you thought it was Brazil. In Canada, it's three than 6% per year. Now, by my estimation, it's about 4 times the rate that is sustainable. Now, massive disturbing at the scale is known to affect hydrological cycle, degrade wildlife habitat, and emits greenhouse gas back into the atmosphere, which creates more disturbance and more tree diebacks. Not only that, we are continuing to plant 1 or 2 species and weed out aspen and birches. They simplify forests lack complexity, and they are really vulnerable to injections and bugs. And as climate change, this is creating a perfect storm for extreme events, like the massive fountain pine beetle outbreak that just swept across North America, or that mega fire in the last couple months in Alberta. So I want to come back to my final question. Instead of weakening our forests, how can you reinforce them and help them deal with climate change? Well, the great thing about forests as complex systems is they have animals' capacity to self-heal. In our recent experience, we found with page cutting and retention of herbs, trees, and regeneration to a diversity of species and genes and genotypes that these mycorrhizal networks they recover really rapidly. So with this in mind, I want to leave you with 4 simple solutions, and we can kid ourselves that these are too complicated to act on. First, we all need to get out in the forest. We need to reestablish local involvement in our own forests. You see, most of our forests now are managed using a one-size-fits-all approach, but good forest stewardship acquire knowledge of local conditions. Second, we need to save our own growth forests. These are the repositories of genes and mother trees and mycorrhizal networks. So this means least cutting. I don't mean no cutting, but least cutting. And third, when we do cut, we need to save the legacies, the mother trees and network and the genes, so they can pass their wisdom onto a next generation of trees, so they can withstand the future stress coming down the road. We need to be conservationists. And fourthly and finally, we need to regenerate our forests with a diversity of species and genotypes and structure by planting and allowing nature regeneration. We have to give Mother Nature the tools she needs to use her intelligence to self-heal. And we need to remember that forests aren't just a bunch of trees competing with each other. They are super collaborators. So back to Jigs. Jigs fall into the outhouse. Show me this over all the world.
and it changed my view of forests. I hope today to have changed how you think about forests. Thank you. Applause. And I'm Adam. My number is S034108. My level is junior. Thank you for your listening and goodbye.